Guys, I didn't mean to go live so soon, but since we're here, we're here. Fuck it. Um, let's get this party crack-a-lackin'. Um, again, didn't actually mean to go live at this very moment. I was actually setting the notification to let people know I was going to be on shortly, and I ended up pressing the button to make it go live. So I guess that's how people accidentally go live. They didn't mean to go live, and then they sitting there doing the do with someone like, "Oops, I didn't mean to go live." And you sitting there like, what? Like, come on, bro, you meant to do that. But I guess okay. So I'll amend that and say, then you can go live by accident, sort of. Meaning you planned on going live, but maybe just not at that very moment. so, also shout out to Shannon Sharp. What's up, Carlton? Dang, you came in right away, bro. I was just saying, did you hear what I was saying? Like, I was meaning to go live in like a few minutes, not at this very moment. And I accidentally hit the button to go live. So I was like, all right, screw it. Since I'm here, I might as well just do it now. But I was saying, now I can see how people can accidentally go live when they don't intend on doing so. But only because they did intend on going live, but maybe they didn't intend on going live at that very moment, right? So, like, say they were probably like presetting uh, their video to stream like maybe a few hours later or the next day or something like that, and then they accidentally go live, and then you end up like Shannon Sharp sitting there. Oh yeah, yeah. Like, I still don't believe he did that on by accident. I think he meant to go live to show that he was fucking women because people were saying that he was gay, and he's smashing a chick still doesn't prove that he's not bisexual and switching teams occasionally because he still has a lot of effeminate ways in him, like walking around with his little man purse, tight ass pants. Like everyone like fitted pants with the tight jeans or whatever is cool. But his jeans were so tight it looked like he was wearing like stretch pants, you know. But anyway, we get off that. He's all right. I mean, he was for the former Ravens when I actually cared about the Ravens. I mean, I didn't really care, but I was just happy they won the Super Bowl because they brought it to Baltimore. Um, and again, I really didn't care about the Ravens nor Baltimore or nor the NFL or football. I just liked the fact that Maryland was on a winning streak overall with our university, with our city, all that good stuff. Uh, Enthridge 13 says hello. What's up? Um, I'm gonna put on my glasses so I can see a little better. So what's up to everyone in the live stream? So this should be an interesting one. Carter says the Ravens were nice back in the day. Yeah, like this was what 2000. When did they win? Was it 2001 when they won the Super Bowl? 2002. But like I said, that was the same time when Maryland won the NCAA basketball championship. The football team went to one of the bowls, not like the big one, the Rose Bowl. I think they went to like maybe the Orange Bowl, which is still pretty pretty big college football bowl, and I think they won. I think I'm not sure, but I know they went to the Orange Bowl. I think the 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 and the Terps basketball team defeated Duke. That was big because that is our biggest rival. We hate Duke so much. I'm telling you, like every time we play Duke, whether we lose or win, we used to do bonfires. I don't know if they still do bonfires, but they used to do bonfires on campus. I remember living in the frat house at the time, a white frat house, and I'm just chilling. I think I was either studying or just on my computer chatting with people over Instant Messenger, because remember Instant Messenger was a thing, AOL Instant Messenger, AIM, and MSN Messenger, and Yahoo Messenger, or any. So I think I was either like messaging people or studying or doing a combination of both. And one of the dudes down the hallway, he was like, "Hey, bro, you got anything I can burn?" And I looked around. I'm like, "You can take the chair." He got happy as shit. He's like, "Thanks, man." He grabbed the chair and went out and took it right to the bonfire, because the bonfire is right in the center of Fraternity Row, which is like this horseshoe shaped area for all the on campus fraternities. There's some fraternities that were off campus, but all the on campus fraternities were on Fraternity Row. And then there was an off campus area with a few other fraternities and the sororities, which they called the Graham Cracker. There was all these little hot little white sorority chicks. Like, man, I don't know. I missed out not perusing that. Matter of fact, I should have joined that fraternity at the time instead of the one that I did join. Um, but that's neither here nor there. um, the point was, yeah, yeah, Duke was our heated rivals. They still are, even though we're not in the same conference anymore, I guess. Anyway, so that's not what you guys came here to hear me talk about, and that's why a lot of you just left the live, the chat room. You're here to ask, here to hear me rant about World War III. Are we headed towards World War III? To make a long story short, no, not likely. But to make this way more interesting, let's posit all the hypotheticals or whatever. So you guys throw me your hypotheticals or throw me your fears, and let's talk about it. Shadow Ban 4 days says USA just conquered Iran. Celebrating now. Congrats, America. Did we conquer them or did we just? Well, I kind of, yeah. I guess we kind of did. And you know what? Good. like if you weren't on my live stream yesterday, we were talking about this, and like I said, the supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini had this coming for a very long time, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard are internationally considered a terrorist organization. They are the military. Um, they are part of the Iranian military, and they are labeled designated as a terrorist organization. Okay, so we hit them. Apparently, according to Trump, because he gave a speech at the White House earlier today, we hit hundreds of targets. Not to mention, Israel also did their thing too. We launched Operation Epic Fury. Israel, in conjunction with our airstrikes, launched Operation Roaring Lion. So we teamed up like Batman and Robin and fucked them up. um, Khomeini is purportedly unalived by our strikes, and I say good riddance to bad rubbish. Usually, I don't celebrate any person's death, but when that person is a terrorist and has been responsible for hundreds, if not many deaths, like we don't even, I don't even know the actual number. I'm not sure if anyone knows the actual number, but he's responsible for innumerable deaths. He yeah, he's responsible for innumerable deaths. So someone said I look like Matthew Perry. How do I look like Matthew Perry? I swear, some of you guys say anything. Matthew Perry was white. He had a soft chin line. I mean, a soft jawline. Like, how do I look like Matthew Perry? That doesn't even make sense. Like, now you're not even comparing me to a black person. Now you're comparing me to Matthew Perry. What? I wish I had Matthew Perry money and Matthew Perry fame. But yeah, that's weird. Um, how does America wants a regime change for Iran? Oh, they're gonna get it now because we, again, purportedly we've destroyed most of their leadership, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini. A lot of Iranians are celebrating. Like a lot of those folks do not like. Look, a lot of these people do not like their dictatorships under which they lived. So it's always funny when you see people here mad that we've ousted an authoritarian autocratic leader while complaining about our very own supportedly autocratic authoritarian leader, which he is not because he was, democratically elected twice. Um, but we call our democratically elected leader an authoritarian or autocratic leader or fascist, and hope to see him ousted, if not unalived. Meanwhile, complaining when we do that for other countries, make that make sense. But a lot of Iranians are celebrating this. A lot of people did not support him. There are people in the Iranian government that didn't support him. And look, you best believe that we had intel we had intel on the ground before we made those strikes. That's another thing. That's something that people don't also realize. These military strikes don't happen in a freaking don't happen in a freaking military vacuum. There's a lot of intelligence that is shared before we do these things, and that can only be done through willing partners in those countries. I don't think some people realize that. Let me put on my glasses. I'm not going to strain my eyes. Um, VLC, this is Reddit, thorough fear of bucolic destitute. You misspelled destitute, but but meandering veins of ochreous loam redolent with petrichor and rustic somnolence. So you think just using big words makes some sort of sense? You sound on the spectrum. You got to corral that a little bit, bro. Like make that make sense. It reminds me of Dennis Miller Live 30 years ago when he used to have his HBO special, and it seemed like he just threw a bunch of big words, and a lot of people thought he was smart just because he was throwing big words, and his arguments only weren't always that great once you got past the use of the big words, but whatever. Anyway, Carlton says Trump is nowhere near like these real dictators. Exactly. They weren't democratically elected. Khomeini has been in office since the 80s, and I believe actually since the 70s. Like I said yesterday, they made fun of him back on The Naked Gun, which came out in the 80s. He and the thing about uh a thing about a lot of these terrorist type authoritarian leaders is that they often what people miss what a lot of people miss is that they don't just terrorize the US and Israel and the EU. They terrorize their own folks. When you look at a lot of these Islamic terrorist groups, the people they terrorize the most are their own people, much more than us, because those are the people they have immediate access to, and those are the people they want to keep in line. So this is why often when we topple these authoritarian regimes, the people who come out and support are the very people of that country. That's not a surprise. Now what sometimes can botch things up, like back in like 2003 with Iraq, is that we we do this. We try to immerse ourselves in this regime change, and it we don't do that in a way that the people want there. So hopefully we've learned that lesson, but we'll see. Carter says, I pray no ground troops are sent in because if so, some of our sons and daughters will be unalived. Um, yeah, I'll say this: when people say no ground troops, um, I'll put it this way: they mean no conventional troops, no big army, big Marines. But anytime we say there's no ground troops, there's still special ops on the ground. Like when we same thing with the Ukraine Russian war. We had so much going on with them, and Putin was like, we better not send in ground forces or he's gonna start attacking us and all sort of stuff. And we were saying we were gonna keep out of it. We weren't gonna attack ourselves. We were just gonna arm the Ukrainian forces to fight Russia. You best to believe we have special ops on the ground. Anytime we say we don't have ground troops, they just mean we don't have conventional forces on the ground. So we if we get involved in something, we we have special ops. Like for instance, when we came in and got Maduro, that was Delta Force. The the Night Stalkers flew in and dropped them bombs, but Delta Force was there with them to extract Maduro. That's what they do. Delta Force is all about, among other things, counterterrorism. That's like one of their big mission. That's like one of their big MOs. It's been a counter-terrorist force, and best to believe we had some special operators involved with these airstrikes. Um, Probably prior to the strikes, though, to be sure. Like I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they weren't still on the ground when we were dropping it like it was hot on on Iran. But yeah, we usually have special operators involved, even though when we say we have no ground forces, I take that to mean we don't have any conventional forces there, like big infantry type folks. Um, but now people are saying, "Oh, it's going to lead to World War III." Blah 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 blah. Like people say that about every single conflict, and I'm tired of people crying wolf. Like uh, people need to realize, not because people. It's funny. All these people play Call of Duty all the goddamn time, but when real shit goes down, there's they shit their pants. Like every conflict is not a possible escalation of World War III. This was U.S. and Israel retaliating against Iran after the bullshit with them, funding and arming Hamas and Hezbollah and all this other BS they've been doing. uh, Stephen Pryor says war doesn't necessarily mean a static conflict. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I agree with that. Um, Zach 3540 says Delta Force did a better job than SEAL Team 6 did with Bin Laden. They lost a stealth helicopter and they also got to bring a tape measure needed to help ID Bin Laden's height. Dude, don't even get me started with that because there are a lot of special operators that said that whole thing with Bin Laden was bullshit anyway. Like we already had like different folks have said, look, we already had him. That was just staged for for the public, or you know that we actually had him before and let him go. There's a former Delta Force guy just talks about that actually. Like they had the man at one point, and they were told to back off.
these helicopters came in from nowhere. They didn't know who they were, who was in those helicopters. They came in, swoop up, got them, and left. This was prior to when they got him in Pakistan. But again, there's people in the special operations community that said that was fugazi. Like that whole thing was staged, and SEAL Team Six or DevGru, that doesn't ask questions. They were sent in to pretend like they had to come get this man, even though, again, according to some special operators, he was being held there already. Like he was not, you know, he was not, freely moving around. Like we already had intel, we already knew where he was. He was already being detained. Like I don't know. That is something that only people who were involved in that at the time will know during the Obama administration. But from what I will say this, I don't think what the public was told about the so-called capture of bin Laden was genuine. I think a lot of that was bullshit. And SEAL Team Six has been eaten off of that for decades, or Navy SEALs in general. And I want to make it clear: SEAL Team Six and Navy SEALs are not the same thing. SEAL Team Six is a Tier One elite unit, part of J.A.C. And they're called SEAL Team Six colloquially, but they're actually called Development Group, or Dev Group for short. Whereas Navy SEALs are a part; they're not part of J.A.C. J.A.C. are just the Tier One units. But every Navy SEAL has claimed to be a part of that. there was there was active duty in that era, claims to be a part of that that capture and kill raid, and I just find it all dubious. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The Delta Force did definitely come in and do their thing with Maduro. That was like a textbook operation. Like, it was a few fumbles, but for the most part, that was like a textbook operation. And they came in flying, listening to Chief Keef. Allegedly, they were sitting there jamming to Chief Keef when they came in to do that exfiltration. uh, Carden says Iran simply doesn't have the muscle to go against Israel and America. No, they don't. But what that's I'll say this: they aren't. Look, if it came to a full scale war between us, it wouldn't be that easy. You gotta remember, we were in war with Vietnam for 20 years and couldn't kick their ass. Of course, I don't know. Vietnam was like an anomaly because they were like, I always say this because I have a Vietnamese friend. Shout out to my homeboy Mike. I always say like Vietnam is like a freaking they're like a Wolverine, or a honey badger. Like anytime people came in, they gave them the business. You first had the French come in, uh, and that's when they made it off um, the French Indochina, which was like Vietnam and Burma and Laos and Cambodia. Like they held control of all that parts of Thailand and all. Like that was French Indochina, and they pushed them out. And then when Americans came in, because of the northern Vietnamese were being backed by China to establish communist rule over Vietnam, we got our asses kicked. But like again, they were being supported by Russia and China at the time. Well, Soviet Union and China. Mostly, I'm gonna say mostly Soviet Union though, because right after the Vietnam War, then China and Vietnam went to war with each other, which lasted less than a year, and they pushed China out too. Like they kicked China's ass. I don't think a lot of people know that. That was actually the last war that China's actually fought in was like back in like 1979 or something, and they lost Vietnam. That's why people keep saying, "Oh, China, China's China's scary." But I'm like, they couldn't even look. They couldn't even handle. They couldn't even handle Vietnam. And yes, granted, we didn't win against Vietnam, but we were in there for 20 years in the undeclared war, which meant because it was an undeclared war, Congress never gave approval so that we could send in the full force of our military, which made it unwinnable when you can't put, you know. So anyway, but the point is, yeah, it it wouldn't be as easy as people think because Iran is an formidable adversary. Again, like I said, they were one of the foreign adversaries that's been talked about for like years, decades, along with like when the neocons put up their whole plan of stabilizing the Middle East and talking about the axis, and when George W. Bush talked about the axis of evil, it was Iran, Iraq, um, Afghanistan, and North Korea. Like that was his axis of evil. Um, like I said, Iran is well funded. They have a well funded military, and again, they funded other Islamic terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Hamas against us and Israel, and they would be a formidable adversary. I think we would win. With, I don't have any doubt that we would win. That we wouldn't win, assuming we could. It would be a full scale war. If it was a full scale war, if it's going to be some Vietnam type shit, then no, we might not win that because anyway. But yeah, in a full scale war, we would more than likely win, but it it would not it would not go as smoothly as people think. In the 80s, we we backed Saddam Hussein and funded the Iraqi government as a stalwart against Iran back in the 80s. So we've been dealing with Iran for a long ass time, starting all the way back with the 1979 Iran hostage crisis under Jimmy Carter, which I mentioned yesterday too. OG Cyril says house cleaning. Terry Will says retired veteran to all my fellow service members on active duty. Be safe. Word. Now, some of active duty dudes, they want, they like this sort of stuff just because um the dudes who are in infantry and special ops, like this is their time to earn their badges. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them, I know of some folks who since retired, and they were mad that they were active duty during peace times because they never got to go down range and put in that work. Uh, but look under Bush, Obama, and Trump, they're putting in that work. Clinton, some did, but it was mostly peaceful. Other than what happened in Somalia with the Mogadishu thing and the Kosovo. Even though I don't really think we had ground forces during the Kosovo Serbian war thing. Then we had then we had the extraction from the Haiti. And anyway, yeah. I mean, hopefully all the troops are safe. But to all those gung ho guys they wanted to put in that put in that work down range, they're gonna get their chance. That's for sure. Because you'd be surprised, but some special ops people will be honest and say that you know by the time they came out of training, like they didn't get to see, they didn't really get to uh, do anything. They didn't get to put in that work. And you think like all these special ops people are like these dudes that have bodies on them, bodies upon bodies, and that's not necessarily true. They might go through training, and by the time they get out of training, most of the conflicts are nil. So they're just basically in a capacity where they're just um, training and deploying to train other forces overseas and stuff like that, but may not actually do any do anything out on the range themselves. So who knows? Marcel says, "Thank you. Good, great vibes, positive." Vince Jackson says, "You look like Shannon Sharp." Dude, no, I don't. I do not. Wait, Stephan's meant I meant salt. Okay, what was the original? Aaron Pryor. I don't even know who Aaron Pryor is. So, Zach says the Green Berets are the largest special forces, and one of their jobs is to organize and train resistance forces. Yeah, I know. Actually, the Green Berets are the only special forces. Like people misuse that term. Like special forces is only applicable to the Green Berets. That's literally what they are called, Army Special Forces. Everyone else are special operations. Like Green Beret are literally the only ones who are special forces. That's their name, Army Special Forces. Everyone else falls under special op under under SOCOM, under Special Operations Command. Whether you're talking about Ranger Regiment, um, Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, and so on and so on. Like those are all parts of Special Operation Forces, but not Special Forces. Special Forces is the Army Green Berets. Terry Will says Iran has a formidable military. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like people think it's not a cakewalk. I mean, I do believe we would win in a full scale war, but yes, they do have a formidable military. I mentioned a few weeks ago, and I think also yesterday in my previous stream, Top Gun Maverick, even though they didn't name the enemy, that if you look at the layout of what was going on in that movie, it was heavily implied that that was Iran and that they did that strike against in Top Gun Maverick. Stephen Price says Iran and Venezuela are part of the BRICS nations. I thought, I'm not sure. I think Venezuela was. I don't know about Iran. Um, I just missed some stuff. Sorry, I jumped at my finger made me jump all the way ahead. Pause. um, Carlos says Vietnam obliterated us in guerrilla warfare. They were hiding in bushes and popping out to attack people. They were hiding underground in tunnels, coming out to attack us. Again, it wasn't. It was partially. Yeah, I mean, part of it was guerrilla warfare. Then the other part was they had the home look they first of all they have hometown advantage, so that's always an issue when you come in as an invasive force, right? That was the first thing. They have hometown advantage, and again, as I was telling people yesterday who were bitching and moaning um, about the strikes yesterday, saying it was unconstitutional and blah 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 blah. I was like, the president doesn't need U.S. doesn't need congressional approval to launch a military strike. He needs congressional approval to declare a war. And I was saying that many wars and conflicts have been fought without congressional approval. And I was like, Vietnam was the best example where it lasted 20 years from 1955 to 1975. And one of the reasons it never went well is because we never had congressional approval. So the, the military was never authorized to send in the full force of the U.S. military into Vietnam to put in that work. Because it was never a war approved by Congress. And when you don't have when you don't have the approval of the American government for a full scale war, that is going to limit your ability to win. So that was one of the issues with why we didn't win Vietnam was pure politics. The other thing is, yes, again, I think the Vietnamese are like honey badgers, and though they're small and less better less better equipped than us, they they fought like they meant it. And like I said, they were also backed by the Soviet Union. So um, I remember during in the 2000s, during the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war and the war on terror. We had three wars going on in the early 2000s thanks to George W. Bush. We had the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, and the war on terrorism, which meant small scale conflicts throughout North Africa and the Middle East. Um, I remember when I was active duty at the time, and some commission officers were talking to us, and they was like, guys, they was like, we shouldn't panic. You know, there was like a lot of our generals he was talking referring to back then, this like 20 plus years ago. He was like, a lot of our generals were lieutenants back in Vietnam, and they saw the mistakes that we made, so we're not going to make the same mistakes. Well, he was right because we made a whole bunch of new mistakes. but but yeah, I, I I don't know. Like I said, the Vietnam thing was there was so many factors in it that made it unwinnable. Like I said, there was hometown advantage for the Vietnamese. There was the politics back home that didn't allow us to send in all of our armed forces to 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 actually win this. Uh, and other things involved. So, and it was around that time that we really started honing our skills in special operations and stuff like that. Um, for instance, and I know this is an aside, like GI Joe, a real American hero, that cartoon and the comic book and the action figures. When you look at the cards that because the Hasbro used to have like the cards for each figure and for Transformers too. But anyway, and you would read the back. Almost all of these characters were like were like people coming out of Vietnam War, like Duke and Snake Eyes and all these other folks, and a lot of the stuff that special operations folks do came out of that time, out of that turmoil. So, but anyway, Terry says my condolences to the three service members that were killed. I wasn't even aware of that. Yeah, definitely condolences to the the family members of those service members. Joseph Horwitz says free Iran. Bless the IDF. Free Iran. Okay. Oh, they getting a taste of freedom today. Whole bunch of guys. I don't. For what it's worth, we got a whole bunch of Persian baddies now available. I'm just saying. I don't know if you want to date a Muslim woman. They make really great. Well, I'll say this myself. I'm not converting, but they make really great wives. I'll tell you that much. And Persian women are hot. I'm look. This girl I almost dated in college was Persian. I didn't even know it, like because she didn't wear like a hijab or anything. So she just was regular. So I thought she was Spanish until she told me, and she was a knockout. So we almost got together, and I ended up pushing her on one of my homeboys because I wanted her friend who was a Spanish chick. Unfortunately, she wanted another one of my friends who was this Jamaican dude. Anyway, Persian girls are baddies, guys, and now we just got a whole bunch of them on the market. So I'm just saying, we gave them freedom, and now I don't know. Might want to give them a 90-day fiance visa. I, I'm just saying. Learn to speak Farsi, please. Johnny Watt once says if we put boots on the ground, it's going to be hard to beat them. Mm, uh, um, I don't know. Like I said, it's not going to be a cakewalk, but I believe that in a full scale war, we would beat them. All other things being equal. So I got to put in that ceteris paribus clause. That's Latin for you folks. Ceteris paribus is Latin for all other things being equal. So yeah, all other things being equal, if we sent in ground troops, we probably would win. But this is not going to be. It would not be an easy war. Not at all. Zach says Vietnam was a slow buildup. The South Vietnamese were supposed to be the primary force against the communist North Vietnamese, but the South kept losing, and so the USA kept sending more Americans. Yeah, like I said, Vietnam was a clusterfuck in what not to do, and like I said, that's why that lieutenant who was speaking to me and my unit at the time back in like '03 or '02 was telling us, he was like, look guys, he is like, the wars we fighting today are not going to be like Vietnam. He is like, a lot of those leaders now, our generals were lieutenants back then. They saw the mistakes that our leaders back then were making. They're not going to make the same mistakes. Unfortunately, he was only partially right. They didn't make those same mistakes, but they made new mistakes. But yeah, it was, look, that would that would be like a whole TED talk or master class in itself to talk about everything that went wrong in Vietnam. that that literally could be a whole course lecture, and it literally is. There are literally, course lectures you can take in college on just Vietnam alone. Bennett Vandergriff says you're really live every day, aren't you? I try to be, but sometimes I'm not. Like there, there's been a few weeks where I hadn't been live for like there's been times I hadn't been live for like 2 weeks. Um, but even when I haven't gone live, I'll usually make shorts, and people can check out the shorts as well. But I try to be live often because I can get in my hours, um, and get new followers and stuff like that. So once I'm traveling again, I'll probably start making more long form videos as opposed to live. But I might go live as it'll be a combination. It'll be like combination of walking around doing mobile live streams and also doing long form video content. But that is to be determined. Johnny Watson said the ones that come home are messed up in the head forever. That's not necessarily true. That's a myth that everyone comes home with PTSD. The truth of the matter is, if you look at the DSM-5 or the DSM-4 or even the DSM-3, PTSD, like every mental disorder, is partly heritable. Most of our and most mental disorders have a heritability ratio, um, which means, in other words, there's a genetic component to it. So not everyone, because this was originally referred to as shell shock back in the day. You look in the older psychiatric manuals or psychological textbooks, it was referred to shell shock. But the thing is that that's not necessarily true. If everyone who saw conflict, it, everyone who came home, whoever saw conflict, would suffer PTSD or acute stress disorder as well, which is another form of it. And we simply don't see that. What happens to be the case and I'm talking from someone who has a psych degree, okay, is that there's a genetic component to mental disorders, whether PTSD, depression, anxiety disorders, um, and so forth. That not everyone is going to manifest that. What happens is you already have a genetic predisposition to um, that mental disorder, and then there's a triggering event like warfare or living in a violent inner city or in a refugee tent or in a refugee uh, town or something like that. Like these sort of things can be triggering events for someone who already has the genetic predisposition to something like PTSD or major depression or anxiety disorders, um, and things of that nature. Um, but no, it's simply not the case that everyone who comes home who've seen conflict are messed up in the head forever. That's not true. Fortunately, Baselia Root says my husband was in Kosovo. Okay, was he American military? Basilia Cypher says, "Did you get Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green?" Dude, the only Pokemon I play is Pokemon Go. I don't play all that other stuff. And I know you trying to make a reference saying I'm a nerd because I got the glasses on. I get it. I actually like Pokemon, but I don't play all that. The only Pokemon game I've ever played is Pokemon Go, which I still currently have on my phone. Zach says the problem with Vietnam was that the South Vietnamese were basically fighting for money. The North Vietnamese were fighting for the love of communism and a way of life. Again, I don't know. I can't say that the South Vietnamese were only in it for money. I'm pretty sure a lot of them did not want to be under communist rule. And yes, and I don't know because again, I don't know all the facts of the Vietnamese War, so I'm not going to lie to you guys and pretend to be an expert on something of which I am not. Um, I, what I will say is I doubt that the South Vietnamese were only in it for money. Where some of them were, sure, but you can say that people in the NVA as well. I'm pretty sure the people in the NVA in the North Vietnamese army, not all of them were truly committed to communism. Many of them were just fighting because, look, being a soldier, you make money being a soldier, right? Not to mention, there's perks to you know pillaging. But anyway, uh, I think we gotta be careful not to like assume, you know, that everyone is for one thing and everyone's for another thing. Things on the ground are reality is way more messy than that, right? What's up, Stargazer 756? Carter says more countries would have to get involved for World War III to happen, and if it does, trillions of dollars will. Uh, Dang, where did trillions of dollars will be made, and none of us will get a single dime. Yeah, well, yeah, doing warfare, the military industrial complex does make a lot of money, so there are people involved in the military industrial complex that love a good that have never seen a war that's not worth fighting because they hope they fill their pockets whenever we get into conflicts. Um, but I will also say a lot of innovation comes out of out of wars too. Things that go into military research and development often trickle down to the civilian space later on, like the internet, for instance, because of you know DARPA back in the day. We have the internet, and I believe they also created email as well. But I know they definitely created internet. So yeah, but you're right that a lot of countries would have to get involved for World War III to happen, and I think people just lose their shit. And it's just, every time there's a military conflict, there are so like if people looked up how many conflicts there's been uh, in just the 20th century alone compared to the amount of wars we actually fought in, they'd be surprised. Even the 21st century, we've only been in the 21st century for 26 years, and there's been a ton of minor conflicts compared to full scale wars. And if you look at the history of violence, large scale wars have gone down dramatically since the beginning of the 20th century. There have not been wars on the scale of World War One and World War Two literally since the 40s. The closest was like, you know, right after World War Two was Korean War, right after Korean War was Vietnam War, but both of these wars were in lesser scale than the previous wars. Vietnam lasted much longer than the other wars, but there was less there was less death and destruction than in the war in just world in World War Two alone. In World War One and World War Two combined, we saw death and destruction on a scale that humanity has never faced. Or look at the American Civil War, the carnage, man. But yeah, if you look at uh, a a statistical trajectory of war and violence, it has gone steadily down with some spikes here and there, like in the 2000s, because again we were immersed in three wars at once. Uh, but largely, the statistical trajectory of war and violence has gone down steadily over the past, you know, uh, 2,000 years, or however far back you want to go. Zach says the problem with Afghanistan and probably Iraq was the occupation and handoff to local forces was never going to work. The local enlisted personnel would come to training high on drugs. Dude, where are you getting this information? That is not, you. You just make these long, you just make these grand standing claims. Like I don't. It's that's their enlisted did not come all high. I think look, they're just not as better. They're just not as well trained as the American military, basically. And we look at Afghanistan, we gave them 20 years of democracy. The problem is they offloaded the security of their country onto us. And that's why I was never sure how we were going to pull away from Afghanistan, because in we were pretty much there in the long term to keep their country stable. They never, like, we were training their forces to be sure, but they never took off the training wheels. Like eh, Afghanistan was completely dependent on us and our blood, sweat, and tears to keep their short-lived democracies going. And despite us training their uh, their new government's military and stuff, they never took off the training wheels. Like as soon as we said we were leaving, their president fled, and the very day we left, Taliban swooped right in, and they didn't even resist. They didn't even try. So I don't think that has anything to do with them being high. It just has to do with them being incompetent, among other things. Incompetent and too dependent on us to secure their secure their government. With Iraq, there was a lot of stuff going on. For one thing, Saddam Hussein had while he was in power had kept a lot of competing forces underfoot to keep Iraq a stable nation. A bunch of tribalistic. It was a bunch of tribalism going in Iraq, and as soon as he was toppled, all these competing groups vied for supremacy. Um, so it was a lot of things going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. They had nothing to do with their forces being high when training. That I mean, that's funny, but I mean, I can't. I don't think. I don't think you really take that seriously, though. John the Appleseed 218 says they won't be Muslim for long. Nah, the women. I don't think the look. If you're referring to my joke about all the Iranian baddies now available for dating and marriage, um, I was joking, but no, I seriously doubt those women are gonna. Some might, but more than likely, most of those women are not gonna convert. What they would do is either expect you to convert, or they will, or some of them will just bite the bullet, proverbially speaking, not literally. But I think a lot of them will just bite the bullet and deal with uh, a marriage in which there's two different uh, 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 interreligious marriage, right? Interreligious marriages are harder than interracial marriages. I'm in an interracial marriage, and it's fine. Interrelig and matter of fact, both of us are like, well, she's agnostic, I'm atheist, so we get along fine as far as religion. But if she was Catholic, like most Filipinos, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. Um, but to date a Muslim woman would have been harder because at some point either they expect you to convert or you will expect them to convert. And an interreligious marriage with a Muslim woman would be kind of difficult, to be quite honest. Um, it can work, but it would take it would take a lot of understanding to do, and I I don't think a lot of those women would be willing to convert to Christianity. Some might. Also, you gotta know not all Persian people are Muslims. There are quite a few Christians in Iran who are happy again that the Ayatollah Khomeini is gone. But there are some Christians and Jews in Iran, to be sure, and Buddhists. Carter says they're going to rocket for rocket now. Iran just hit Israel with a missile and took out some people. Damn. Well, I know Israel does have their dome. What do you call it? The someone in the chat room uh, can put up what that is. The Israel defense um, system, the Iron Dome, I think it's called. So that's going to keep out a lot of stuff, but not everything. And yeah, Iran is also hitting American um, installations in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, um, and somewhere else. I think Iraq or something. So if they want it with Hove, they're gonna fuck around and find out because look, they don't want to play missile. They don't want to play tit for tat when it comes to airstrikes because we can drop. And again, I'm hitting way above my pay grade, but it is classified from how far up in space we can actually target someone. But we can target uh like places from outer space. Shout out to Space Force. This is how surgical we are with our airstrikes. We can hit a specific target from outer space. So they're gonna fuck around and find out. Padre Lover says hi. Margaret Savannah says this. Thank you. No fruit on pizza. So this is what I'm incredible five head. I don't even know what that is, but I like the username no fruit on pizza because I believe that. Well, actually, if I'm gonna be pedantic, there technically is fruit on all pizza because tomatoes, the tomato sauce, tomato technically is a fruit, so tomato sauce is. So I guess there is fruit on pizza, but I get it. You mean no pineapples and all that shit? I completely agree. I've tried it once and I do not like it. It was like some nasty seafood pizza. Like, don't even. I'm going on a tangent. I remember like when we used to go to Virginia Beach every summer as a kid with my dad, and we would always go to these little pizzerias out there. And he would always get seafood pizza, and me and my sister was like, "Ugh, what the fuck?" Because I don't want seafood, and it had like seafood and fucking pineapple chunks on the pizza. I'm like, what is he eating? Like, can you get us a like my sister and I was like, can we get a real pizza? Like, we got ours with like pepperoni and sausage or just cheese. He got all this nasty seafood and pineapple on the damn pizza. Like, come on, man. Anyway, Moonlight 01G says, what is your opinions about this war, USA, Israel, and Iran? Well, I mean, that's what I'm talking about right now. Like, this is the second part of a live stream I did yesterday when I said, was the airstrikes on Iran a W or not? And I said, pretty much, I think it was a W. Um, so I'm just going into it now today, talking about the speculation. Everyone's saying, "Oh, we're gonna in World War III." Like, not every conflict is not. And my whole point today is that not every conflict is going to lead to World War III. Like, literally every time we've had a conflict since the '90s, people have always said, "Oh, it's going to be World War III. It's going to be World War III." I'm like, come on. Rudy Armenta 3512 says, "Never stop having wars until Jesus returns." Um, if that's your take, I guess. Ryder Cooten Cooler 7504 says hi. PBGF 0411 says there's no such thing as God's chosen people. What an awful thing to claim. Who claimed that? No, I don't think has anyone in this chat room claimed that. I mean, aside from Rudy talking about, you know, the coming the, the possible religious apocalypse in the future. I don't know, but anyway, I don't think anyone claimed that. And I'm not going to make this. I'm not going to. I'm definitely not going to steer this into some religious debate because I'm not here for that discussion right now. So you guys can go back and forth about that amongst yourselves. I'm gonna just skip ahead to stuff that has nothing to do with talking, uh, debating uh, that stuff. Anyway, Carlton says he has Iron Dome. Thank you. Thought that I wasn't sure. So Adela Sophia 5549 says, "Have you ever played Half Life One or Two?" I don't even know what that is, guys. Just because I'm wearing glasses does not mean I play video games or whatever. Like, as I've said a million times, the last video game console I had was the classical NES, the original NES, not 16, not 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 Super Nintendo, not N64, not the GameCube, not the whatchamacallit. I had the original NES, and I ended up playing. And the only time now when I do play games, I will use a what do you call it? The M the M the M not emission I forgot what you call it. The thing that makes your phone or computer act like the video game. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I'm bad with words today, guys. Rearmament says the PS2 was my last console. Yeah, I just after the classical NES, I just wasn't invested in it anymore because I at that time when when I was like um 13, I was just like I'm just gonna keep playing Nintendo until I'm tired of it. So I just kept playing my Nintendo till I was like 15. And then I think either I gave it away or someone or my folks gave it to someone. I don't know, but I never asked for like the Super Nintendo or anything else. Yeah, I would play at my friend's house when they had things like Neo Geo or TurboGrafx 16 or Sega Genesis, and then like later PlayStation and PS2 and the Xbox and all this. So I would play sometimes with them, but I never owned my own console after Nintendo. I just wasn't invested in it, and I thought that I saw it as I at the time I looked at it like it's like oh it's going to be an endless amount of consoles coming out. I didn't feel like having a I thought like I would have to keep buying new consoles every 2 years, which ain't too far from the truth. But I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So I just got I wasn't invested anymore. Instead, I would rather go to the arcades when when available. So Final Fantasy 7, GUXXIGO said, "Did you like the N64?" It was okay. Again, I didn't own any of those video game consoles after Nintendo, the original Nintendo. Anyway, getting back to the topic. So, guys, that's what time do we got? Okay, so yeah, like I said, I just wasn't. I just think there's a lot of paranoia going on with the World War Three. Now, that's not to say that it can't happen, because the First World War or the Great War, as it was originally called, happened out of nowhere because someone assassinated some fucking archbishop of some little bullshit country in Europe. The assassination of some arch no, not archbishop. I'm sorry, archduke. I think it was an archduke. So some random archduke of some Eastern European nation gets assassinated, and that starts the Great War, which became World War One. And then the economic fallout from World War One, especially as how it affected Germany and these other countries, led to World War Two. And then the bullshit that the Soviet Union was doing during World War II that made us enemies uh, led to the Cold War, which tur- turned into the Korean War and the Vietnam War. So who knows? Like my thing is everyone. I think everyone is wrongheaded in just assuming they can predict that World War III will come about every time there's a conflict. So that's where I am because again, literally every time we've had some sort of conflict in the past 40 years, someone has said this is going to lead to World War III, and it hasn't. We were in much we were in much serious wars that did not lead to World War III. Again, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Persian Gulf War, the Afghanistan War, the Iraq War, the war on terrorism, a bunch of minor global conflicts that's happened in the past 50, 60 years. None of these things escalate into World War III. So I think people need to stop being so reactionary to every single thing, saying, "Oh, it's gonna be World War III." Yeah, nah, I doubt it. Now, I'm a prior service guy, so if it did get to that, I'm gonna sign up. I'll let you know that. Oh, I wasn't getting all my messages. Let me see what I missed here. Mm, Rudy says World War III is going to be some garbage country attacking Israel, and the world will be blaming Israel. They already blame Israel for everything. And my what I get so annoyed with these other countries in the UN always stop always piling on to Israel, as well as a lot of these liberals and progressives here in America that's always saying free Palestine, all this other bullshit. I want to remind people there are like 50 fucking Muslim countries across the world, like 50 of them, literally, and there's one Jewish country. So you mean to say the Jewish people can't have one ethno state, but Muslims can have dozens of them, right? Like not all of them are theo. Not all the Muslim countries out of that 50 of them are like uh you know theo theocracies or Arabic ethno states, but several of them are. And you're saying, oh, but the people of the Jewish diaspora can't have one country, and they've been getting their asses kicked for centuries throughout the Middle East and Europe. Um, and again, I don't know how do and then the funny thing is how the U.S. gets so much hate for supporting Israel when we weren't even the ones who set up Israel. It was the fucking British Empire that set them up. At the time, Palestine was a territory governed by the British Empire, by the UK. They were the ones who they were the ones who working alongside the newly formed UN formed Israel in 1947. How like but we get so much flack for being a supporter of them because they are a strategic ally to us. But we're not the ones who set them up. How does the I want to know how does the UK escape all the hate for this and we get all of it when when they're the ones who set up Israel. And on top and but to be fair to the British Empire, to the British folks, to the UK, they did originally set it up to be both an Israel and a Palestine. But at the time, and I should say allegedly, because people are going to challenge me on these facts, but when they first set it up to be a two state a two state um, region, allegedly, allegedly, the Palestinian leaders rejected that because they did not want an Israel. They wanted to all be Palestine, meaning all Arab Muslims. No, they didn't think that the Jews should have their own sovereign state. So the UK botched that up because again, they originally set it up to be a two-state region, an Israel and a Palestine. And allegedly, the Palestinian leaders of that time rejected it because they didn't want an independent Israel as a sovereign nation as their neighbor. And as a result, when Israel was established, they immediately went to war with them. every every neighboring country in that region went to war against Israel in 1947 when they were established. From Egypt, all those countries surrounding it, mostly all of them. Anywho, my point is just that it's funny that the UK doesn't get any of the hate that we do for um, when they are also supporters of Israel, maybe not as fervently as we are, in as far as their politics go, because I think the British government abhors the hawkishness of the Israeli government, and I can see why. But in any case, I still don't see how they don't get any hate for, for the fact that they were the ones that pretty much helped establish them in the first place. But whatever. Carter says people who keep calling for World War III don't realize that they can be drafted, and if the numbers get draft numbers, and if the numbers get draft numbers low, the old heads are going to. I'll tell you this: they don't have to draft. Well, I'm outside of the drafting age, but being a prior service member, I will actually volunteer. The thing is, when you volunteer, you can dictate where you want to do. So I'd be like, hey, I want to come back, guys. Oh yeah, damn right. Okay, okay, specialist. I was like, okay. Speaking of specialists, the first thing we need to do, yeah, y'all can go ahead and give me give me my NCO. Make me an NCO. Oh, you want to be NCO? You got it. All right, Sarge. That's the first thing. I'm coming back. I want to be NCO. No more of this E4 mafia bullshit. I'm done with being the E4 mafia. If I come back, I'm not E4 mafia. You making me an NCO. That's number one. Two, yeah, yeah, this one I'm gonna need from you, Uncle Sam. So volunteering gives you benefits, but a lot of old heads don't have to worry because, like, if you fall outside of the drafting age, then you're good. But to be sure, there will be some prior service people volunteering. I would be one of them. Rudy says all the countries around Israel attacked and still lost to that small nugget of desert. True that. And there were several wars they launched, several, and they lost every single time. They There was several wars and the intifadas. Carson, Israel is going to be established in Uganda after World War I, but plans changed. Really? I never heard of that. In Uganda? Man, I never heard that. I, I'm I'm gonna look. I might look that up later. Uh, that's crazy. Carter says today's young men aren't built for battle. Everyone is overweight and on dope. To be fair to Gen Z, and Carlton, I rarely, rarely defend Gen Z. But to be fair to them, when the greatest generation uh, went to war, um, most people thought they were they were going to be too soft as well. Like iron sharpens iron. So I think the people who are already in the military, like they're still very good at what they do, possibly better than in my era. But on top of that, the people who are drafted, they will rise to the occasion just like they did in World War I and World War II. Like coming out of World War II was the Gilded Age, age of decadence and well, no, I'm sorry. Before coming out of World War II, we were in economic depression, largely as a result of the things that happened during the Gilded Age prior to that in the 1920s. And a lot of people thought these dudes were soft. um, but times times have a way of you know br- bringing back masculinity, and I do think all other all other things being equal, that if Gen Z was tasked with the mission of going to war, they would eventually rise to the occasion. That's at least that's my suspicion that I think um, that they would rise to the occasion. Like you're allowed to be soft during soft times, but when times become tough, people become adapt and become tough as a result. Um, but yeah, like I said, to say talk about World War III, people don't even. It just shows his it. Every time people talk about World War III, I just think it comes part of it stems from historical illiteracy. Carter says, "I trust Gen Z operating a drone. They are masters of video games. They got it on lock." Yeah, I mean, even with like ground forces, like I mean, we can shit on them, but they will be trained by some of the best folks. Like when you look at some of these Army and Marine videos on Instagram, and it shows people in the Ranger Regiment training, um, the, these these Marines training and stuff like that. Like they're on point. Corn says Gen Z is trash. I mean, normally I would agree with you, but like I said, I think in a time of crisis, they will be forced to adapt, just like the people 100 years ago, the young men of 100 years ago were forced to adapt. Like people didn't think that the young men from the 1920s could rise to the occasion that was required during World War II, but they did. I think it would be the same. I could be wrong, but I think they would rise. I think eventually they would rise to the occasion. And if not, so be it. Carlos says the men 100 years ago weren't fueled by McDonald's. Yeah, but at the same time, they were starving. Like this was the again, they they came out of the economic depression, and then look at um, I can't remember what YouTube channel I was watching, but look at the food they were eating in the early 20th century. That food was not. I mean, we can talk about McDonald's all day, but some of the stuff they were eating, that shit was not healthy. You look at you look at the stuff they were eating in the 1920s and the 1930s. That stuff was not great. Or you read books like Of Mice and Men. Uh, they they were not eating. They they weren't exactly eating the food of champions back then. They weren't eating their Wheaties. I'll tell you that. It's more like they were eating wheat grass. But Carter says the military will be drafting old millennials and Gen Xers. What? No, I mean, no. So we all fall outside the draft age. Like I forgot. I think it's like what 40 after 40 you fall out of that drafting age. I think because it's like from like what 17 to 40 or something like that, or eight no like 18 to 40 or something like that. Anyone older than that wouldn't be drafted. They would probably be volunteering to come in, and people and again the good thing is if a prior service member came in their middle years to volunteer, um, they would probably be working in a supervisory role to to these younger troops. Like I said, if I came in now, like say there was a World War III or something closely to it of that severity, where they were looking for prior service members um, to reenlist or to take or to even take up a commission. Most of these older folks will be serving in a supervisory role. Um, like I said, if I came in, I'm pretty sure they're gonna bump me up from specialist to an a sergeant, maybe even a staff sergeant because of my degrees or whatever. If not, or they could just be like, well, do you want to take a commission? Which I'll do that too. But either way, like older millennials, Gen Xers, Zennials, if you will, um, if they were to uh, come into the service, no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of prior service. Prior service members, if they were to reenlist um, during a full scale war, they would probably come in as a supervisory role. Older millennials and Gen Xers, they're not going to draft them. They would volunteer, and I'm pretty sure they would take them. What would happen is they will probably up the age of acceptance for enlistment because they keep upping the age. If you guys have noticed, like it's gone up from like 30 to 35 to 40. I think now it's currently 41 or 42, depending on the branch. Because I don't think every branch is the same with the age they will accept uh, enlistment. But it has crept up over the years. So anyone I'm guessing over like 41 or 42, they're not going to get drafted. They will have to like voluntarily enlist. Uh, John E. Snow says, "Bro looks like a dumb smart guy." Yeah, your mom looks like a ugly, good-looking bitch. Anyway, so I don't know why they try it with me, Carlton. They always they I don't know why they keep trying me. But anyway, yeah, like I said, if anyone over 42, I highly doubt they'll get drafted. Things will have to be going left for them to be like, all right, all you guys in your 40s and 50s, yeah, just come on in, player. We need you guys. When it gets to the point where you need people under the age of 18 and people over the age of 40, things have gone bad. That's when you that's when it's like Helms Deep type. That's when it's like the level of Helms Deep, for you Lord of the Rings nerds like me. Any Lord of the Rings geeks know what I mean when I say if they need people under the under the age of 18 or over the age of 40, things have gotten to Helms Deep severity. Cars says I drafted a clown to the block squad. Right. Don't come in here trying to clown. But yeah. Um so yeah, like I said, if we start taking people under the age of 18 or over the age of 40, things have gone bad. Like I said, I know people who lied, in the earlier years who were 16 and lied about the age to get into to join the military. Some of them might have been under the age of 16, lied about the age just because they looked older, probably because they were taller or maybe had some facial hair, and lied and said they were like 18 and were able to join. Now you can join when you're 17 with your parents' permission, but I don't think you can join at 16. I know you can join at 17 with your parents' permission because I almost did when I was in high school because I was still 17. Um, and I was talking to the Navy at the time. And again, the story that I told a thousand times is that I lost interest in enlisting in the Navy because I had a girlfriend. I was like, nah, I'm good. And the recruiter didn't push it because I was a minor, so she wasn't gonna try to push it on me. Pause. And I remember my dad was upset, not to the fact that I wanted to join the military. He was mad that I wanted to do the Navy and not the Army. He's like, oh, he just want to join the Navy like his uncle. So how to say, yeah, kids were fighting in World War II. Well, Yeah, it really like there was a bunch of folks that were like 16, because they had lowered the age at the time. Like I said, I was more than likely they would lower the age before they up the age, but it'd probably be a combination of both. Like I said, they if we were admired in the actual World War Three, not just some hyperbole about World War Three, the actual World War Three, yeah, they probably would start letting people at the age of 16 enlist, and they probably would let people over the age of 40 enlist. Um, but again, that would be a that would be an actual World War Three, not just some regular regular war. James Christmas says, haha, Pops was in the army. You talking about your Pops or my Pops? Because yes, my Pops was in the army. He was um he was a combat medic, which is why he didn't want me to become one. Because when I saw it, I was like, yeah, I want to be a. I was going to sign to be a combat medic. He's like, you don't want to do that because you won't be able to. He's like, you won't be able to go to school and be a combat medic at the same time, which was bullshit. Because I saw a guy who was an EMT when I was in school. He seemed to be doing just fine. Carson says Gen Alpha and Sigma is tougher than Gen Z. Um, I don't. What's wait? What is Sigma? I think after Gen Alpha, they're calling it Gen Beta, but that won't be until 2028. I think they're going to be called Gen Beta until they find a better name. Just like they assign these names until they find something else. Like the millennials used to be called Generation Y because they didn't have anything to call them after Generation X, so they just called. So they started calling us Gen X and then Gen Y, and then later on they start calling them millennials because they were born during the change of into the next millennium. Uh, Gen X was originally called the lost generation, but originally, like I said, there already was a lost generation, which is the people born in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, right before the right before the greatest generation. There was the lost generation. That was actually the first generation of the 20th century because they started in the 19th century and then was crossed over into the first 2 years of the 20th century, 1900 and 1901. Um, but as far Gen Alphas, I don't I don't know anything that distinguishes Gen Alpha from Gen Z yet. It's just like when Gen Z first came about, you know, like 13 years ago, there was really nothing that separated them from millennials at the time. And then now we see the differences between Gen Z and millennials because they go to war with each other all the time. They kind of leave Gen X out of it just because they don't actually know who Gen X are. Although most Gen Z's parents are Gen X, but they probably just call them boomers because they don't know what Gen X is. Um, but right now, I don't know what the differences between Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be, but I'm pretty sure by the time Gen Alpha reaches their 20s, they're going to have their own stereotypical behaviors to separate them from Gen Z. But I just don't know what that is yet. And then there'll be Gen Beta, and we'll see about that. Currently at Beta. Terry says United States Navy. Love it. Anchors away. Thank you. Yeah, like I said, my uncle was Nate. Every like all the men, all the elder men in my family all served in the military pretty much. Like Army, Navy, Air Force. I don't think any of them served in Coast Guard, but they were either Army, Navy, or Air Force. All my father and my uncles and my grandfathers. Um, I said both my father and uncle were Vietnam veterans. My father though he never deployed. He stayed stateside, Even though he was, I don't, I need to ask, like, well, we're not really on speaking terms right now, but if I were, I would ask him, how did you manage to stay stateside throughout during the Vietnam War? He said he almost reenlisted, but they were going to deploy him. He was like, nope, and so he left the army instead of reenlisting because they were going to send him over to Vietnam, which is probably a good thing. Is that might have meant that I wouldn't be here. My uncle, I don't think he went to Vietnam, but he did deploy. But he told me he was in the Philippines. So, um, Carlos is Gen Alpha are people that are currently in elementary school. Yeah, like the oldest Gen Alpha are 13. This is why I always laugh when people are like on you here on YouTube or on Instagram or Facebook, mostly older people talking about, yeah, Gen Alpha is cooked right now. And these kids is he's like these guys are dating and doing this and that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, these are still little kids. I was like, y'all confusing them with Gen Z. It's like everyone is like every generation is catching hell for Gen Z. Like millennials were being blamed for stuff that Gen Z were doing, and now Gen Alpha is getting blamed for what Gen Z is doing, even though Gen Alpha are still little kids. Like I said, the oldest Gen Alpha is 13, but they're getting blamed for the stuff that Gen Z does. I'm like, no, put that on Gen Z. Stop blaming millennials. I was like, yeah, I realize the millennials are in their 40s now, and people still talking about millennials like they're kids. I'm like, that is Gen Z. And then when they're talking about the stuff that 20-year-olds and teenagers are doing, it's like them damn Gen Alpha. I'm like, that's not Gen Alpha. Those are still little kids. I was like, you're talking about Gen Z. Like most of the stuff that people keep like complaining about aren't millennials, aren't Gen Alpha, it's Gen Z. They are the problem. They are the problem and the possible solution, but they are definitely the problem. Real Meaver says Gerbert here. Cheers from Zimbabwe. Thank you. Appreciate it. Samson Anatoa says love. Thank you. Carter says all that trolling will help Gen Z on the battlefield. Uh no, unless they want to go into psyops, then it might help. I I was telling this I was telling this to a friend off camera, and I was like, dude, I'm so mad I didn't know about psyops back when I first enlisted. I would have definitely did that. For one, psyops is part of special operations. Two, like it would have fit right within my educational background because they encourage people in psyops to get a background in psychology or related behavioral science degree. Uh, they they had the same as a minimum they had to get a top secret security clearance like I had for my MOS, but they also would be likely to get the TSI the TS SCI poly level security clearance, which is the highest level, which means you can get a really nice federal job with that clearance. So I missed out on that. And you go to language school. The only other job that I had thought about doing, which I would have went to language school, would have been interrogator. And I didn't want to do that because the guy at the map station, he was like, I'm not gonna lie to you. He's like, dude, if you become interrogator, you're gonna have to beat people's ass. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. He said, plus, he said the language school is really difficult. He said if you don't pass, then they're gonna just put you in whatever MOS is available at the time. And that's what deterred me. Plus, I didn't want to be a Russian interrogator. So, but I did hear that interrogators did get nice little federal jobs. It'd have been different if it wasn't. It'd been nice if I got something else like interrogator for another language outside of Russian, because they'll train you like a local dialect of Russian. It won't just be like generic Russian. They're going to train you to like a local dialect of Russian. Um, and my friend who did go to language school, she was like, it's not really that hard. She's like, you're well educated. She's like, you would have passed. I'm like, oh, okay. she's like, it wasn't that hard. So yeah, to been able to go to language school, you know, get my airborne wings. Now I was offered airborne in AIT and when I was in training in advanced training AIT, but I turned it down just because I wanted to come home as soon as possible, not because I was fearful of jumping out of planes. I was like, that's kind of cool because I actually asked the sergeant at the time. I was like, I said, can even reserves do that, Sarge? He was like, yeah. He said, you want to do it? I mean, well, he didn't say that. I was just like, he was just like, yeah. He's like, yeah. Anyone is open to anyone. He's like active, guard, reserves, whatever. I'm like, cool. But I didn't volunteer, and wish I did. And like I said, the only reason I didn't was because I wanted to get home soon, and I was also expecting a chick that I had met there at Fort Gordon, who was going to be. She said she had folks in the DC area, and she was going to be out there July 4th. So I was looking back to being back home and getting to my permanent duty station um, in July, so I could meet her and just be home. I didn't want to do more. I didn't want to be in training for 2 more weeks after AIT, but I wish I did. So I would have got airborne, my language school, a TSSCI poly clearance. Um, got to been able to actually use my my educational background in the military. Um, but I didn't know about psyops. I don't even remember seeing it in the listing of available MOS positions, and I'm pretty sure it was there. But to get back to your joke, yeah, I mean, troll. If you were to go into like psyops or civil affairs, then maybe trolling would be a good a good thing to be able to do. But they don't even troll that well, to be honest. Look, I roast the trolls better than they troll me. I think people I think Gen X are better at insulting people than these trolls. These trolls all they can all they do is they're annoying, but they're not even funny. Anywho, what time is it? 8:10. Yeah, I guess I'm about to roll out. But yeah, I think we pretty much um hit the nail on the head here. There's no reason to think we're about to head into World War III. Now, tomorrow could completely change things. For all I know, Iran um, might have the backing of Russia, China, North Korea, uh, um, and some other countries against us and Israel. And then it would be like a whole full scale international conflict. But even still, it wouldn't be called World War III until after the fact. So again, it still would be dumb because again, it wouldn't be called World War III until after the fact, not as is actually happening. Carter says tomorrow's when the stock market opens, so things could get wild. Yeah, again, but like I said, with the military industrial complex, some of these companies like Halliburton and all that stuff that specialize in making military equipment and vehicles, they're going to see an uptick in stock in people buying up stock. So who's to say? Uh, I like I said, I can't predict it, and I, I'm just I'm not that savvy with with the stock market nor with geopolitics to know what's to come this tomorrow and the rest of this week. If 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 the conflict will escalate, will it de-escalate? Um, will more nations get involved? Um, whether we will put boots on the ground to affect the regime change or what, I don't know what's going to happen, and I think most of us don't. mostly no one else does outside of the people currently in the White House right now and over in Tel Aviv and Tehran. Those are the only three places right now that's really in control of what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. But the White House, folks over in Tel Aviv, and the folks over in Tehran. Other than that, who knows? I'll will my stocks take will my investments take a hit or will they see an increase? I don't know. But let's hope for the best and see where things go. Um, but hopefully this doesn't escalate more. But again, like I said, if they start look, I'm not, I'm not being facetious here. If they do start looking for prior service members, I will, I will reenlist. I'm serious. I'm dead ass about that. I would reenlist because, like I said, at my age, they'll probably bring me on in a supervisory role, probably for my prior MOS. Not now, if I went to, um, or I don't know, they could put me into training for a secondary MOS if I requested, but that would probably be on a needs basis. More than likely, they would probably bring me on as a supervisory role in my primary MOS, which was um, cable wire systems and installation and maintenance. So I'll be I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would just make sure that I bring on the wifey to be to be with me, and I'm good. So we'll see. I don't think things are going to get that drastic. Like I said, every time we've had a conflict, people say World War III. Like the these people are obviously babies because where was these people like no one was saying that during the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War. Well, there were some people, but people today are just so overly dramatic. But that's because they're so feminized now. that's that's all. That's why I think everything to them, every time someone shoots a gun overseas is World War III because they're so feminized and soft. Even though these dudes play all these war games every day, all day. Soft ass. But anyway, let me stop. But I'm out. I'll talk to you guys later. And you can keep it going in the comments. And if you want to support your boy, again, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or you can send me a super here on the channel. Whatever you want to donate is fine. Or the Cash App will be in the description as well. So go ahead and help your boy out if you want, so I can buy more fruit snacks. Carter says people say are hyping it up and even creating fake AI videos of fighting. I know. I've seen some of them on Instagram earlier too. It's, if World War III would hit them, they wouldn't even know it. Like they would be sitting there on their phones sharing memes. But all right, I'm out. Thanks, Carlton. Peace out.